Hello, my name is Siva Kumar, and I'll be walking you through the next hour and a half on a very interesting topic, Umoja user management. I'll be taking you through a journey with three parts and a conclusion. The parts are context, concepts, and content. And all three together will give you a perspective that will help you better appreciate the user management design as a whole and will help you in identifying potential benefits and improvements while implementing the solutions to your entities. Let's first start with context. The context means what Umoja is and where it is and how it relates to me. It all, it all started with a blueprint when two things were clear. The software application is SAP, which is being used by many of the Fortune 100 private sector companies. The complex business processes of United Nations were mapped using the benchmark practices within SAP. This was beginning of a long journey. On the macro level, when you look at it right now, we have 12 modules of SAPs which is used in the foundation, which is the finance and the source to acquire solution, and 8 major modules on the extension part covering personal management to travel management. Umoja journey is an evolution. From July 2012 up until today, if one was watching the Umoja homepage, might have noticed the changes or to the tagline below the logo. It is from making it happen to its happening and currently staying on be the change. Is that only the change? Well, we have more to say. The Umoja evolution process started when the foundation went live in Unifil in July 2012, followed by Cluster 1 and Cluster 2 entities focusing on mostly on the peacekeeping missions. The UE1 was piloted in MINUSTA on July 2014. Here we are right now getting ready for the C3 entities like you. This brings us to an interesting point in our journey, as this will be the first time we are implementing an integrated Umoja solution, which means the issues, the problems, the questions and concerns, might be very unique and distinct to you. However, with extensive development experience, extensive deployment experience, and the lessons learned through the past implementations gave us a different perspective, and we have made all the necessary adjustment to the user management as it is to be scalable, agile, and at the same time flexible. I'm confident that we can map any of your complex business process situation with the existing design framework, and I'm sure you will be concurring with me at the end of this presentation. With that context, let's move on to concepts. The things you know right now and the things that will be very new for you. So please be patient. A little bit of reinforcement would definitely be of help to you. I'll also use this to segue to the content section to better explain the processes. A basis for any user management is authorization, which is nothing but a set of privileges that can be exercised in the system. If you look more closely, all such sets can be placed in a pattern. A drafting, where you will be creating and managing a transaction, approving, which will be certifying and approving a transaction, and monitoring and managing includes display, reports, and dashboarding or KPI functionalities. This set of homogeneous set of privileges was then packaged into what is called an enterprise role. An enterprise role is then assigned to the users. Some of the examples of the enterprise roles are accounts payable user, HR partner all, time manager, etc. And a complete set of enterprise role is available in iSeek and updated regularly for your reference. Please take a note. Enterprise roles are assigned to the users and not to the positions. Then we move on to the role assignment. From the role catalog, the role assignment is performed based on the role mapping. In this example, I'm taking HR partner all I'm going to give it to UNON HRMS staff and SCAP HRMS staff. Please note there is no difference between the two in terms of the executional capabilities. Then you might ask, how can we enforce the data domain? How can we restrict the UNON HR partner to manage only UNON staff members and not SCAP staff members? This is taken care in two ways. As I explained earlier, one way is for the foundational components and the other way is for the extension component. Remember, these two are two technical ways. However, from the user and the role mapping perspective, it is totally seamless and opaque. You will be doing exactly the same thing what you would be doing for an extension process and the foundation process. Let's see them now, how it matters or how it differs. The extension part of the Umoja, which is the HR and travel, uses what is called structural authorization. Structural authorization is an authorization based on organizational structure. In this case, there is only one role, and with a combination of the organizational element, we can get the data domain control. In this example of the UNON HR partner will have only access to the UNON staff based on their assignment to the organizational entity called UNON. Same with SCAP. On the foundation, the same feature is exercised in terms of control points. One of the main reasons we couldn't do the structural authorization with the foundation was that the foundation implementation started even before the extension solution, and the OM structure was not available to leverage the capabilities. However, the functionality will be exactly the same. Some of the control points pertaining to source to acquire in the financial part are business area, fund center, and cost center. Then an enterprise roles are derived as an entity related roles by introducing these control points. So a UNON AP user will be assigned to UNON finance department staff, and SCAP AP user will be assigned to the SCAP finance department staff. In that way, the control is exercised while creating the transaction. So let's recap. The user management exercise what is called a dualism. Which first one is the user access, which is explained by an enterprise role, and it dictates what you can do. And the structural authorization or the control points dictate where you can do the tasks assigned to you. The combination assignment to the user provides the right access and the right data domain. Let's extend this. When a user is assigned with an enterprise role, if that role requires a structural authorization or a control point, and it will be specified in the enterprise role itself, and the assignment will happen one after other or immediately. Upon successful assignment, all the users can execute transactions, can manage their self-service, and may be able to approve or reject or review the workflow notifications. The enterprise roles assignment or the combination have four possibilities. The first is restricted with the control points and no workflow. The second will be an enterprise role with workflow and no control points. And third one will be an open data access and no workflow. And the fourth will be a structured authorization with access and workflow control. Let's see the examples. An AP user is an example of the first possibility, and who is the creator of an AP transaction within the business area assigned. He or she is not the recipient of any workflow. However, an AP approver, which belongs to the second possibility, is a recipient of the data created by the AP user for approval. And this AP approver role restrictions are implemented using the workflow process, not within the role. The third possibility is an example is a travel administrator. By mentioning open data access, what we say is the person with a travel administrator role can create or can initiate the travel request for any staff member in Umoja system. However, the fourth possibility of an HR partner role is a structural authorization, and that will also have access controls and workflow controls, which means an HR partner role is always assigned to an entity, and the HR partner can manage all the staff members under the entity and also be the recipient of all the requests originating from the staff members in those entities. As a concept, let's understand the processes, and these are all the basic list of foundation processes starting from financial accounting, costing, cash management, and financial management, and source to acquire. And these are all the list of processes which are in the extension part of the business, which spans from personal administration to payroll management, and also two major self-service components. To explain the concept, I would like to take some help from outside. I was pondering to explain the multiple layers and complexities of the user management and the application, and it is very difficult to explain because the layers are like layers in an onion, so you have to peel one after another. And I got the inspiration from the movie Interstellar. The film features a crew of astronauts who travel through the wormhole in search of a new home for humanity. And in that process, they are able to go through higher dimensions and able to view the whole picture. I strongly recommend you, if you have an appetite for a good science fiction story, you should go and watch it out. Back to our topic, where I'll try to explain the complexity within our subject by drawing an analogy to the dimensions. Please bear with me, it's going to be a little science, but it'll be interesting. There are like four basic dimensions which I want to explore. We all know a single dimensional object, a line which has only length, and a two-dimensional object which is a rectangle which has a length and a width, a three-dimensional object, a cube which has a length, width, and a depth, and a fourth-dimensional object which is called a tesseract, if you don't know before, has a length, width, a depth, as well as also a time. It's like a kind of a cube within a cube in the way in which you want to express. A normal person, we can understand up to two dimensions, like we can see what a playing card is. A bit more effort, we can have a third dimension, which are all the real life objects. And our ability stops there, and we cannot visualize the fourth dimension. It's very hard. Let's see how our analogy works. In the context of the Umoja user management and the Umoja system as a whole, there are four basic dimensions. The Umoja systems, enterprise roles, the process design, and the workflow, respectively. However, there's another dimension called fifth dimension, which people like us in the technical architecture and technical solution, we look at from outside and are able to articulate a solution putting all these four dimensions in place. Let's go through one by one to have a better understanding. The first dimension is systems. All users in Umoja will have access to four basic Umoja systems: the Umoja BI, Umoja Transaction System, Umoja Procurement, and Umoja Portal. So an entity gets live in Umoja like this, like a MINUSTA, UNOG, OCHA. The users in those entities will be able to access these systems depending upon the roles they have. So there is a relationship between an enterprise role and the system. And second dimension is an enterprise role. And we all know that. Let me re-emphasize. An enterprise role is defined as a set of privileges that can be mapped to a minimum of one job function within the organization. Also, please take a note. An enterprise role does not equate to a job. However, it equates to a job function. And more than one enterprise role can be assigned to a user. However, a part of an enterprise role cannot be assigned. And all workflow patterns are aligned to a uniquely identifiable enterprise role. So now if you see, the second dimension is talking to the fourth dimension, workflow. The third dimension is a process design. Let me give you, however complex your processes are, all these processes can be put in a very simple pattern. And this is what I have done, a simple pattern which can take care of 90 to 99% of your processes fall under this path. The first step would be commit to procure. The second step will be you will be procuring to pay. A third step will be preparing to pay and do the payments, and then you run the reconciliation to make sure everything is working in the order in which you wanted them to work. If you see the other side, which is the HR side, you will have a request followed by a verification and approval, and once that data, the request is approved, it gets recorded in the system. And of course, you're going to have reports on the HR side as well to make sure all your requests and recordings were done correctly in the system. So I'm going to give you an example of these processes to make a better understand, and also take you to the fourth dimension, which is called workflow. The example of these processes. When you're going to prepare doing certain things, first what you do is you run a report. Say, for example, I'm going to create an order. All I need to know is like whether I have enough budget in my cost center. So I'll run a report to make sure the funds are available so that I can start doing my commitment or procurement activities. Then the commit to procure is formed by a funds commitment, a requisition, purchase requisition, or an internal order. Then followed by actual ordering, where you do an order or create a contract. Then you procure a material, either a service or a goods. Then you receive an invoice from the vendor, so you enter into the system, make sure the three-way matching is validated. Then once everything is good, so you basically go through the treasury, which is the payment and the disbursement, either using a cash or ACH or electronic, whatever it is. And then you run the reports to make sure all your processes are under control. Same way on the HR side, you will have the request generation is either a self-service or an administrative service, and it gets routed to your HR partners for approval. Once they approve, the records are updated. In these processes, all bubbles in the middle will have what is called workflow. You have a workflow in creating and approving the requisitions, creating, approving a contract, creating and approving an invoice, and creating and approving a cash disbursement, and creating the request and approving the request on the HR side. Let me put all these four dimensions together and give you a perspective of how the processes will flow in an entity. And again, it's an example. There might be slight variations here and there. You might have more steps or less steps compared to the diagram which I'm going to show, but however, it will give you an idea. So you have two layers. One is the cost layer, which has been defined by grants, fund, cost center or fund center, where you're going to fund the dollar amount for your process. And the other dimension is the master data, which is an employee material. It could be a service or a business partner, it could be an org unit, or it could be anything. And these two axes play a crucial role in defining all the four dimensions which we explained. As a process, we have first process is you issue a budget and you allocate budget to your correct cost centers. Once you do that, the budget is available in your cost center. The next step is like you can create a post, appoint a staff, or manage the staff. Or you can create a funds pre-commitment or a funds commitment and keep the money locked in certain in a certain transaction so that you can use it for later purposes. Or you can create a travel request and run an expense report and make sure the payments are dispersed to the traveler or the staff member. Or you can do a procurement thing where you can create a shopping cart, create a purchase requisition, which could be for the goods or for services. And if it is for the goods, you create a GRIR, and if it is for the services, create a service entry sheet. So now you already created all the procurement and other expense functionalities. The next step is to actually do the prepare to pay. So you creating the invoice in all the other side. On the HR side, you'll be running a payroll. The payroll could be either off-cycle or a regular payroll. Once the payments are consolidated and ready to be dispersed, it gets into the make payments bubble. And this bubble diagram explains you majority of the process which is run in any business entity in the world. If you look at different angle now, this whole process travels across multiple function modules within SAP. It starts from grants and travels through your HR, funds and travel and procurement and ends up in financial management. The processes go through multiple systems, will be experienced by users with multiple enterprise roles, and each and every bubble might have a distinct or combination or a multiple set of workflow components. The foundation for all these processes to work in a proper fashion or an orchestration is done by these three components: the user management, workflow, and reporting. With this information, we move to the next segment of our presentation, which is the content. To better explain the content, which is the actual system processes, and to give a mapping back to your the 4 dimensions which we have mentioned in the concept, I'm going to take a real life processes and going to map all these 4 dimensions. The better way to explain from a system to an enterprise role to process to a workflow will be a little difficult to understand. So I'm going to do a different order, but I'll be explaining all the 4 dimensions. I'm going to explain you the process, which is much easier to understand on a 2-dimensional paper. Then I'm going to talk about the workflows. Then I'm going to talk about the enterprise role, then go back to the system to give you the preview of how to visualize. And I'm sure this process will definitely empower you to generate a new perspective about how to look into the new design and how to enable you to better role map your entities for an optimal go live situation. The first process I'm going to take is the hiring consultant or independent contractors. So I'm going to still keep the same, the 2-dimensional axis. On the top will be the cost object, and on the right side would be your master data. And the hiring consultant process starts in the first quadrant, which is you are going to verify the budget by running some reports. Typically, there is a budget availability report, which is very standard in Umoja. And based on the budget availability, or you create an internal order, it is kind of a commitment, you keep the money. And once the internal order is created, you can do the budget redeploy so that the money comes to your internal order and stays there for later consumption. Once you have the money, now you do the selection process and then find out a consultant which is suitable for your requirements. Once a consultant is selected, and then you go through index number generation. In Umoja, every person who is going to be coming on board, whether it is a consultant or a staff member, has to have a unique index number. So you go through the process of generating the index number and then also creating a small mini master, an HR mini master. And the reason for creating the HR mini master is the completion of the HR mini master data creates other master data called business partner, so that in the later process you will be able to pay the consultant after he completes his or her services. The next step in the process is creating a shopping cart. In the shopping cart, what you do is you select the consultant for which you have created a mini master, and then apply the the financial part, which is coming through the internal order, and do the requisitioning of a shopping cart and get it approved. And the step moves on to the contract, where the consultant is given a contract so that he can start his work. And again, the consultant does an onboarding and he does the work and everybody is happy. Once he completes his work, he or she will have to have a service entry sheet where in the system will be recording their attendance and their work which has been rendered to the organization. And then the next step would be evaluated receipt settlement, because in this process the service entry sheets will not be creating an invoice. So an ERS, which is the short form of evaluated receipt settlement, is parallel to an invoice. Once that ERS is accepted and approved, the payments are done using the normal financial transactions based on the data available in the business partner. Okay, so this is the process, which is the third dimension. Now, let's see the complexities underneath how our user management and workflow and reporting manages them. If you see the workflow layer, you can see two things. One, all these boxes in different colors are different modules. Like it goes from the funds management to a non-Umoja process, to a HR process, to a procurement, to a financial accounting, to a financial management. That's step one. And number two, wherever you see the blue cog on the bubble, it means you have a workflow in that process. A budget redeployment is a workflow. Generating an index number has a requester and an approver. And the same with service entry sheet and ERS. In the ERS, it will be a creation of a ERS, and acceptance of an ERS is considered as a workflow. And on the procurement, you have a approval for shopping carts. Then now we saw the process and we saw the workflow. Now we go to the next dimension, how the user management is handling the enterprise roles. If you have to map these processes into enterprise role, you will see something like this. You have more than 10 enterprise roles, 10 minimum enterprise role required to satisfy this process. And each and every enterprise role users with those enterprise role will be performing that particular activity in the system. And there are some non-transactional activities, which is like a selection process or requesting something to be created or notify somebody to approve something, or actually also available, but they are not actually related to an enterprise role. Now this is fine. You have an enterprise role, you have a process, you have a workflow, and the next dimension gives you which system they will be logging in and performing the tasks. So as we explained, this process goes through all four basic systems, which is Umoja transaction system, Umoja portal system, Umoja procurement, and Umoja BI basically delivers all your reports. However, the reports are also available on all these other systems as well. I hope this might have given you a better idea. So let me go into a couple of examples to reinforce the multiple dimensions under each and every process and how it is designed and mapped in Umoja. Let's take the next example in personal administration, which is of a lot of interest to many of our viewers here, is the employee onboarding. An employee onboarding, I want to put again back to the same paper with financial components on the top and the master data on your right side. If you see the master data right now, I changed it into job, positions, org units, and business partner instead of a material, because on employee onboarding, there is no master data as material being used. And again, the quadrants, I already named them. One is coming from Inspira to a non-Umoja to a Umoja HCM solutions. Again, this is a very, very basic process, and any details on individual processes, you can refer to those processes in depth to have a clear understanding. The next step in the process is the job selection or the selection process. The selection process results in one applicant being selected, and then we go into the next phase of generating the index number and then creating a mini master. And also, the selected member has been sent for medical clearance. And once the medical clearance is obtained, then the staff member can, or the applicant in this case, can be eligible for travel and shipment. Then the staff member reports for duty on the day, and then a personal action and letter of appointment has been generated and given to the staff member, and then an ESS, employee self-service activation, is requested, and once it is requested, the staff member can start performing the staff functions. And again, considering the time, I've already put the workflow in the system, meaning like for generating the index number, you have the blue cog as well as the ESS activation is a workflow, and the travel and shipment has a workflow. Now, let me take it to the next dimension of an enterprise role. Now, the same thing can be mapped as an enterprise role view, where you have an OM administrator who will be responsible for creating an org unit or a position, and a GI requester and GI approver, and an HR partner who is going to do a bulk of a process. We also have a new category called UN ecosystem here, and in addition to the non-transactional activities. A UN ecosystem consists of non-Umoja systems which are directly or indirectly connected to Umoja application. What are they and how are they relates here will be shown in the next dimension of systems. So you have a Umoja transaction, Umoja portal, and then in the UN ecosystem you are going to see Inspira, which is our recruitment portal, and also Unite Identity, which is our enterprise identity, where all your sign-in credentials and sign-in authorizations happen. And as usual, you have a Umoja BI, which will be the provider of all the reports across the systems. With that, I take you to the next topic on organizational management. So I'll take only one scenario here, which is a temporary movement, to explain the dimensions. The temporary movement also has a very similar quadrant such for recruitment. So initially, the job opening candidate application happens in our recruitment portal, which gets translated into a selection process, and from there the travel and shipment can happen because it is a temporary movement of an existing staff member, so you don't have a generation of an index number and approval process in that. And then the personal action takes place, followed by the report for duty in the new location. To take it to the next dimension, these are all the enterprise roles. Again, as we said, it's very similar to your employee onboarding. You have the enterprise roles, you have a UN ecosystem, and also the non-transactional entities. And then if you translate that into the systems, you are going to have a Umoja portal, Umoja transaction, and recruitment portal, and BI. Any movement-related personal actions, they seems to be very simple on the surface. However, it becomes very complicated when it comes to the real actions. In a movement which involves two HR partners, one is the receiving person, the other is the releasing person, the things become complicated because the structural authorization has to open up for those actions. If I have a rigid structural authorization, a person cannot move from one area to another, or the movement can happen only by an HR partner who has control on both receiving and releasing side. So to enable the process to work seamlessly, we have adjusted the authorization part of the business to enable the personal actions or any movement-related personal actions can happen seamlessly. We take you to the next stop of travel management. And again, I'm picking up an entitlement travel as an example, but I'm going to kind of give you a feel for it. It may not be 100% reflecting your real business process. The idea, it has only two quadrants. One is the Umoja time management, where the leave request is sought by the staff member. It has been approved based on the Umoja time management functionality. Then the trip is requested. It goes for the HR approval, certification, and actual trip approval. And the shipment again is requested by the staff member or the administrative staff. Then it goes to the shipping unit, and from there it goes to the certification. And that's the request part of the process. And then it followed by an expense report after the trip is completed. And the expense report can, especially it happens in the official business travel, if there is a deviation, it goes to the recertifications based on certain criteria. And then if your deviation also includes a non-UN paid ticket purchases, then it has to go for an approval to the travel unit as well. Then anything which happens with a deviation will be going through the travel claims processing, where there will be a manual reconciliation of what is being approved in the trip request and what is being submitted as an expense claim. If your trip has no deviation, it's exactly as per the approved request. The process will be very simple. It is called an express expense claim, so you don't have to go through the recertification and reapproval. When I take this process and plot it as an enterprise role, and you have more enterprise roles here, and one other thing which I need you to give a closer look is the number of interfaces which are also running. An interface, all the interfaces are centrally managed and centrally maintained in the from a selective set of team. So there is no specific user side enterprise role related to interfaces. And some of the interfaces are the trip, which is the security clearance, and you have a vendor ticket billing interface, and you have ICAO, which is for carbon recording the carbon footprint, and you have a DSA interface, UNLP interface, and EarthMed for your medical services. And then if you translate that into systems, you can see how heavily the Umoja travel solution relies on Umoja portal. And it has a very, very limited set of processes in Umoja transaction system, which relates only to payment and ticket billing. And of course, it's supported by the Umoja BI. And I didn't show all the external elements which are connected through the interfaces part of the business. The next stop is going to be the time management, and time management is a very, very simple topic because there is a request for a leave and an approval for the leave request. However, it gets a little complicated with all these complexities with our organizational structure and cleanliness of an organizational data and who reports to who versus the actual functional assignment. So to better explain, I put it as a small video for that, and let's see how it works. Well, the time management is complicated because it has various enterprise roles, behaves in a various different ways depending upon the situation. So you have what is called a time manager, and also you can have what is called a secondary time managers based on the designation of what you saw in the video. And also, based on your absence type, the workflow behaves in a different way. So some of the in the screen what I said, the first table shows a one-step approval where the request is generated by the time administrator or the staff member goes through the time manager. And the second table gives you the places where there are two levels of approval, or it goes directly to the HR partner. And the third one is actually an interface going to the medical services if your certified sick leave is more than 20 days. Now, let's put it together. So we have seen the context, concept, and content, and how it relates to you, which is UNON at this point in time. And again, this is an illustration only, and to understand how this relates to you, we need to have a closer look at your organization, which takes us to the next page, is an organizational overview. Again, this is an illustration purpose. I picked up the data based on this, what is available in the system as of now. Yeah, you have UNON, and then you have all the organizational under that, like ODG, Administrative Division, non-UNON, which is an administration of justice and safety, security and service, and also you have a Department of Conference Services. So you have either sub-org units, or you call it as departments or units, and you have staff member under that. With that design, if I assign the UNON HRMS staff a role called HR partner and assign it at the UNON level, or they can administer all the staff member under UNON, and also all the requests originating from the staff member will be routed to them for approval. I think this looks very simple. And let's do the progressive elaboration, the same context, concept, and content when it applies to multiple entities. For example, in this case, I picked up UNEP and UN Habitat and IFAD, again for illustration purpose only. And if I take this and try to make it more like a service delivery component, you're going to see all these org units as an org units, like a UNON, UN Habitat, and UNEP and IFAD. And we'll have all the sub-org units and the staff member underneath that. And then what we can do is create a virtual component called Nairobi Service Center, and all the people which are assigned to the virtual service center be provided with an enterprise role called HR partner all. So now what we have done is we have brought in all the entities under one service umbrella, number one. Number two, we created what is called a virtual service line. A service line is the concept of making the process people sit next to each other so that a process can basically travel less time from start to completion. Now with this Umoja's concept and Umoja's flexible and agile and scalable user management, we are providing an opportunity of a virtual service line. Let's take to the next step. What we think as an optimal design possibility will look like this. You will have something called a Nairobi Service Center, which is again a virtual, which will be supporting all the entities underneath that and the staff underneath that. And it is controlled. The main 3 points for them is always assign it the higher level, meaning the Nairobi Service Center will be assigned at the top level for UNON, UNEP, UN Habitat, and IFAD. And the concept is you are going to manage the visibility. So the idea is control what you can see and not what you get. So by assigning the Nairobi Service Center to UNON, UNEP, and UN Habitat, any request coming out of UNON or UN Habitat will still get routed to Nairobi Service Center. And if you want, only a certain set of people will be managing UNON, certain set of people will be managing the UN Habitat, manage the control by what you see, not by what you get. So the Nairobi Service Center can be assigned to a staff from all entities. It's not necessarily to be one entity, and also make sure or make it clear it is not location specific. The optimal design is derived based on couple of components. One is controlling the visibility. The controlling the visibility happens with workflow and approval work center. A workflow is a process where the document moves from the request to some kind of an approval functionality, and the workflow is not location specific, so it basically travels based on the enterprise role and an organizational assignment you have, and workflow always works in line with the authorized enterprise role. So if you are an approver or certifier for a certain cost center and a fund combination, the system knows exactly to send it to you. It doesn't matter where you are physically located, and it also makes sure you have the underlying enterprise role to certify that particular transaction. An approval work center is it's like kind of an inbox, like your mail inbox, where all the approval entities related to your enterprise role assignment are brought in. It also shows you a pending, completed, draft, and rejected items. It gives you the functionality of a sorting and filtering. And also, it all gives you a functionality, all the approved transactions, and also able to display the documents as they have been submitted by the staff member or the initiator. You can view all the attachments, and also it will prevent the deadlocks. In the sense, if the Nairobi Service Center, one HR partner opens up a request and then he or she realizes it is not the request from the staff what she is managing, and they can close the work item, the system will automatically put it back into the common pool so that the other HR partner can pick it up and work on it. And also, it prevents two HR partners working on the same request at the same time. And also it gives a great functionality called built-in redundancy, with which if one of your staff member, one of your colleague is going to be on a vacation or a planned leave or whatever it is, if you are going to be the backup, you can go and manage your filters accordingly so that you will be seeing what your colleague would be seeing if he or she was working. So this redundancy building is very critical because for your uninterrupted business operation. So the transition, the key change inflictors of this whole user management are, remember, like when we are going to assign an enterprise role, like a drafting and approval, make sure or make a clear understanding, all changes in the Umoja systems are recorded and reportable. Nothing can be done without knowing who did what. And the standardization of a transaction processing and approvals. In the sense, what a HR partner does in ESCAP is exactly the same happens in UNON, is the same which will be happening in headquarters. And by that, what we have given is a strong local controls with a clear central oversight. And factors to be very kept in mind for role mapping and your future understanding of the business is Umoja design or the user management design will satisfy your business complexities. Definitely it will satisfy. We need to go towards that the mapping exercise to make sure it does work. And workload shift based on the new enterprise rules. When you go to all these 4 dimensions, you will understand what are all the process falls under which kind of a module, which kinds of the system, and how you are going to either map to your existing staff or augment the staff or move around the staff members to make sure your workload distribution matches your demand. And also, there is a clear distinction between a drafting and approval. A person who's creating the request cannot be the approver. And hence, there is a clear distinction between an administrators and the approvers. And the last thing is encourage and leverage self-services. As the cluster 3 entity, you will be having the integrated Umoja solution, which means all the staff member will be having an employee self-service functionality given to them by default. The more the usage of the self-services, the less the number of the administrator you would be using. So that will increase the operational efficiency. With that, I move on to the last word by the great Confucius. Life is really simple, but we insist on making it complicated. I hope this presentation has taken you a step towards a simplicity from what was perceived as a complicated solution. Or at the least, now we know what a tesseract is. Thank you.